All right, so last week's Torah portion gives us this startling contrast that is put forward by the fact that we share a similar material and it goes in two completely different directions. We have gold. Is gold a good thing or a bad thing?
Depends.
It very much depends. Gold could be a golden ark of the covenant, or it could be a golden calf. And what separates them out is not necessarily the intention with which you build it. Because at the moment, if you would have asked the Jewish people as they were building the golden calf, are they doing something evil? They would have said, no. They felt that they were right and justified in doing it. So, to a certain degree, as we learn and we understand that anything that the Torah tells us is a lesson, any warning that the Torah gives us is because it is a warning that we need to hear, that we are potentially also susceptible to the same issue, right? Look, I don't think any of us are really in danger of fashioning a massive golden calf at the foot of a mountain in the middle of the Sinai desert. But obviously, there is some warning there to us. And we are also meant to fashion a golden ark, even though we don't have a tabernacle, and even though our names are not Betzalel. But the Torah telling us these things is an indication that we are warned against, that in our own lives we are being warned against the golden calf, and we are being commanded and led toward building a golden ark. And then the question is, how do we make sure in our endeavors that we don't build this, but we rather build this? What is the golden ark and the golden calf in our own lives? As we see throughout the Torah, references here, Kabbalah, in Scripture, in Psalms and other such places, the gold represents the passion, the fiery passion that we're meant to have in our relationship with God, or in relationships in general. It's the love, it's the desire, it's the zeal. And the concern is, as we oftentimes see, especially in relationships, that the zeal and the passion can end up going in one of two directions. And all the more so when the relationship is not the relationship we have with somebody that is equal to us, a spouse. Although I will say that in my relationship, obviously it is not equal at all. That's more of a vertical relationship between me and Nachami, but far more in a sense a relationship, a very complicated relationship, a very difficult relationship to master. As much as any relationship is difficult to master, but significantly more is a relationship that we are meant to have with God. On the one hand, right? We are meant to love God, not just be in awe and fear and devoted and subservient, but to love God, which speaks to a little bit of that equality, right? Love speaks to nearness. And then on the other hand, we also have to be completely in awe, and the term in Hebrew is batel, nullified in God's presence. And so this relationship, this love, this gold, this passion and fire is a difficult thing to master. Now the concern is that obviously we are shooting to build the golden ark, the ark of the covenant, that zeal and passion that is reflected and manifest in a covenant, an unbreakable bond between us and God. Sometimes we deviate and we slip and we end up building, or have the potential, God forbid, of building a golden calf. What is a golden calf? What is, in a sense, the big concern with paganism? Why is that such an evil thing? It's more than that you're turning your back to God, what is the motivation? Why is somebody conserve God, or they conserve a block of wood, or this particular idol? What is? And it's an interesting thing, because today we don't seem to have the desire to serve idols at all. That's not our passion, or so it would seem, right? We have other desires.
But we deserve idol in a different form.
Oh,
Serve
Yeah,
idols.
You
not
can
deserve.
have, right, you can have, I mean, we serve item in a different form. I mean, the money, the
Fame.
other,
Power,
whatever the social people, whatever the world telling us what we need to be, and all of the things. So we still have that idol.
right. And interestingly enough, not only do we have a different version of idols, it's actually the same. It's actually the same thing, because it's all a variation of the same theme. And here's the common denominator between all other services of idols. And by the way, and this is the part of the problem, can also creep into our service of God, which is the reason, the main driver to serve an idol is really to serve yourself. The one you're really serving, that you're really serving is you. Why? Because if, for example, everybody's into, well, we have to serve a higher power, but I get to choose which higher power, right? I get to choose which idol I serve. So who's really at the top of the heap? The idol or me? So even as I serve the idol, but I'm serving the idol of my choosing. So
Wait, but choosing God is also your choice.
1 minute. That's you're touching on the issue, the conundrum, as it were. When I'm serving money, it's obviously I'm serving myself. When I'm serving
Right.
fame, fortune, power, I'm also serving myself with the desire that either I want to climb in the ranks of that, I want to indulge in that, I want to be that. But it's not about serving something higher. It's really about serving myself, my own sensibilities, my own indulgences, etc., etc. And that's, again, serving an idol is I serve the idol that makes sense to me. I serve the idol of my choosing. So who's really at the top of the heap? It's myself, my sensibilities, my me. And believe it or not, unfortunately, that can also creep, and that's what makes the road to a golden ark not an easy path to in a sense navigate. Very quickly, it can lead to the path of the golden calf, because when you're serving God, you can also end up serving yourself. Why are you serving God? And how much do you serve God? Do you serve God as far as it makes sense to you? Do you serve God because it makes you feel fulfilled?
Most likely.
So when we say, then, give me 1 moment. Now we're not going to say that is automatically serving idols, but there is a little bit of, as they say in Hebrew, avak, right? When there's lashon hara, and then there's avak lashon hara, right? There's lashon hara, and then there's a dusting of lashon hara. It's a little bit of a taste, and the concern is that when you're serving God, is there a certain amount of self-service there? I'm doing it because it makes sense to me. I'm doing it because it makes me feel fulfilled. I'm doing
Yeah, I mean,
it.
you can't really get away from that unless you're a Kohen or
So
a
again,
tzaddik.
you don't have to be perfect, but you do have to be vigilant, because if you don't address that, if you're not aware of that, and if you're not actively, in a sense, regulating that in your service, then you can very quickly snowball into actually making a golden calf, where you're very far away from God, and you're entirely serving yourself. As we see so many people in the way they serve religion has nothing to do with God, and it's entirely about themselves. And that, to a certain degree, is almost a greater disappointment than if they would just say, I want to live a life of hedonism because I don't care. My life is all about indulgence. What's almost worse is to claim that you're serving God and delude yourself that you're serving God when you're actually serving yourself in your own defined and recreated structure of spirituality.
super
So
true.
how
Super
can
true.
you serve God without, it has to feel right for me. I mean, in order to be there to serve God, I need to feel that it is right for me. It's comfortable. It's fulfill me. It's
Sure.
fulfill some needs of mine. So how I get beyond my needs? How do I say, okay, I put my needs away and let's meet? Because that's a very high level, unless you're born religious.
No, I want to tell you, people that are born religious suffer. If anything, to a certain degree, they're also serving themselves. That this is what this is what's comfortable. This is what I know, right? So I'm not necessarily so much how much am I devoted to God, and how much I'm just devoted to sticking to what I know, what I'm familiar with, what I'm comfortable with, right? Why do Ashkenazis love gefilte fish and Sfaradim love whatever? It's not necessarily because they have any physiological differences. It's because this is what they know. They grew up eating the gefilte fish, and this one grew up eating matbucha. So a religious Jew serving God is not necessarily either. Now, I don't want to be critical, of course, to a certain degree. Not to your point that we're all going to still, unless we are perfectly on the level of a tzaddik. But how do we make sure that we regulate this, that it doesn't snowball into where we really, to a certain degree, stop serving God and only serve ourselves, even as we are doing the Torah? How do we end up not going down the path of making, with our gold, with our passion and our zeal, right? They wanted God. They didn't. Why did they set out to build a golden calf? Because Moshe is not there to show us how to get to God. We need to find our own path to God. It started off with a very, in a sense, lofty proposal, mistaken one. Moshe was not really gone. But very quickly, because they did not have direction, because they did not have guidance, they ended up making a golden calf. So many people set out and in this relationship to get to gold. How do you make sure you end up with gold and not fool's gold? How do you make sure you're doing this right? And to that, last week's Torah portion introduced two things before it started telling the story of the golden calf. Two things were introduced in last week's Torah portion before. Seemingly relatively innocuous things, small things, really small things. And yet, right before the story of the golden calf, God says, before I tell you the story of the golden calf, here's the remedy, right? Because in general, there's an expression, HaKadosh Baruch Hu makdim refuah lamaka, right? Hashem sends the remedy before he even sends the trouble or the illness, right? So, what happened in the beginning of last week's Torah portion? The first Aliyah talks about two things before it goes into the whole story. First thing that it talks about is the machatzit shekel, collecting the half shekel coin. Right? The half shekel coin was collected. Every single person, man, woman, child, rich, poor, doesn't make a difference. You gave exactly that half shekel. You gave that 50 cents. Right? The half shekel coin. What was the half shekel coin made out of? Anybody know which material? Don't all scream at once.
Copper, I don't know.
The silver. The half shekel coin was made out of silver. Okay. And interestingly enough, it says right there, Lechaper al nafshotechem. This is, as we talked about, that the Torah doesn't follow chronological order, it follows a thematic order. Here, this machatzit hashekel was actually the atonement for the golden calf. Was the most direct atonement for the golden calf. And it says, Zeyitnu, Hashem told Moshe, this is what you should give. And it says, why? What does it mean, this? This implies that God is pointing at something, right? This is what you should give. And it says, Zafisha Tama Moshe. Moshe was confused. What do you mean, God, by a half shekel? And God reached under his kisei kavod and he pulled out a half shekel coin of fire. And he saw Moshe, right. And Moshe says, no. What? Moshe wasn't aware of the denominations. He didn't know how to break a dollar. He didn't know what a half shekel coin looked like. What was puzzling Moshe? And the answer,
wasn't gold.
No, the half shekel
Why
coin was
money? Why ask money?
But even more than that, the Jewish people, don't forget, this is an atonement for the golden calf. So this is happening in the aftermath. What was God's original sentence against the Jewish people for the golden calf?
First
He
he wanted
wanted
to destroy them.
destroy.
Utter annihilation. And Moshe barely gets God to rescind that decree. right? God says, Moshe, let me and I will destroy them, implying that if you don't let me, I won't, right? So Moshe immediately steps up to the moment. He does everything he can. He says, God, if you're going to do this, I don't want to pardon it. I even take me out of the book, right? God says, fine, Moshe, you win. I'll forgive the people. So what's the replacement sentence? What's the replacement punishment? 50 cents, right? Can you imagine a judge, right? The judge comes up and says, for this crime, for this heinous crime that you did, the death penalty. Oh, please, Your Honor, please have mercy. Okay, fine, 50 cents.
So that's insult.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Moshe's like,
insult.
what? 50, half shekel? A minute ago, this crime was so severe, you were ready to wipe the people out completely, and now instead it's a half shekel coin? What?
Well, it may be in a way, it's a reduction of everybody's value to equal. Something to do with the fact that everybody gives exactly the same. So
Oh.
don't think of yourself as being great because everybody is the same. I don't know.
And also importantly, it doesn't say bring 50 cents.
It brings a half, so you have your other half.
That's
That's
actually
important.
interesting,
Right.
because you know that till today on the eve of Purim we have the tradition of doing machatzit shekel with whatever. Now here's the thing: you do in whatever currency is you have. In America, we're very lucky in the fact that the coins, depending on what the coin, like in Israel, for example, the smallest number you have the 10 agurot, right?
They
And you
still
have
have that?
20 agurot.
They don't have the grush anymore?
No, they don't have grushim. It's all agurot.
Okay.
But when they get to the 50-cent coin or the 50, what do they call it? They don't call it chamishim agurot. What do they call it?
Chetzi shekel.
Chetzi shekel. And also in America, 5 cents, 10 cents. But $0.50, and that's what's written on the coin. It's a $0.50. If that coin would have said 50 cents, we wouldn't be able to use it because you're not going to bring an amount that is 50 of something. You have to bring something that is very deliberately half of something. That's the entire message. But importantly, we said of silver. So one of the atonements of the golden calf is bringing a half shekel coin of silver. Okay, that's one point. We're going to get back to that. Okay, the other atonement for the golden calf, or not the other atonement, but this is in the lead up to. It doesn't say that this is an atonement for the golden calf, but it does present this in the lead up to the story of the golden calf. Kind of again, as we talked about, the antidote to the golden calf was
there was a minyan after the men had to go with 10 people to pray. If that was as a result.
No.
What about Shuva?
No. We're not. What I'm saying is, we're not. Later it talks about teshuva, etc., etc. I'm talking about, in the sense, the lead up to the story of the golden calf talks about two seemingly unrelated and innocuous things that we're going to talk about what their significance in fact really is. The first one we said is the collection of the chatzi shekel from every single person. The second thing is that all of a sudden, right here in Parshat Tisa, 2 parshiot we move from Parshat Teruma, we kind of say, oh yeah, there's still one more vessel of the temple that we have to make. We already talked about, the very first one we talked about in Parshat Teruma was the Ark of the Covenant, right? And then we talked about the menorah, and then we talked about the shulchan, right, the table of the showbread, and then we talked about the altar, the golden altar, and then the copper altar. And then all of a sudden here, 2 parshiot later, and not only at the beginning of the 2 parshiot, we already talked about the machatzit shekel. Then we're like, oh yeah, one more vessel, by the way. The kior.
The kior from the mirrors.
Yeah, the kior, as both Paula and Jerry are telling us, the kior was the copper urn that the Kohanim had to use to wash their hands prior to entering into the temple. It was so. If I had to, let's say, if I was giving out awards and I was using the titles of the vessels as in a sense, kind of the caliber of the awards, and I said, you win the Golden Ark Award, right? Oh, wow, right? You win the Menorah Award, the Golden Menorah Award, right? Where do you think in the line of caliber would this copper washing station come in? If you're going to dedicate, let's say you're saying, Rabbi, I want to dedicate a certain vessel in the temple, right? The Ark of the Covenant, that's quite a dedication, right?
Well, it might be first because you have to be clean before you go in. You have to.
But even in that, you can make an argument that that puts it at the bottom. All the rest of them,
Right.
of the vessels, you can't even touch until you're clean. And this one is the one, in fact, that you're going to touch specifically to make you clean. So in let's look at it. In the material used, it's the lowest. It's not made of gold. It's not made of silver. It's made of copper. In its positioning in the Torah portions, it's also at the lowest because we talked about nearly all of them in Teruma. We talked about one more of them in Tetzaveh, and all the way here in Tisa, kind of forlorn and separate and last and really last. We're talking about the Kior. And then we talk about in terms of the caliber of holiness associated, right? It's not in the Holy of Holies. That's just and that is only the Kohen Gadol, and only on one day of the year. Then you have, it's not even in the Holy, along with the menorah, the Kodesh, along with the menorah and the Shulchan and the Mizbeach Hazav, which is all the Kohanim, but still kind of more specifically, the Kohen Gadol is the one who can more readily engage with those. It's not even in the, it is in the Azara along with the other altar, but at least the other altar you needed to be pure for. This one is kind of all the way. So kind of from every measure, you would seem to think that it is the lowest. In fact, I'll take it a step further. In theme or material, there's also an argument to make its lowest. The rest of them came from pure gold, pure silver, pure copper, fresh. This is the only vessel that God indicates where you should get the material from, not just what material you should use. All the rest of them, he says, this one you make out of gold, this one you make out of silver, this one.
So that's what makes it holy?
Oh, well, 1 minute. But this one, God says, don't make this out of fresh copper. Repurpose. I want you to repurpose copper. And not just copper. And it says Moshe was actually bothered by where God told him to get this copper from. God says, get it from the Marot Hatzovot, from the mirrors, the ladies' mirrors, right? If the ladies wanted to see and make themselves beautiful, they had a polished bronze. It was actually the only copper that the people owned before the sacking, before the collection of all the gold and silver and copper of the Egyptians, but everybody kept at least a little bit of copper that they can polish and burnish so that they can use it to see their reflection. The ladies use this. And Moshe says, really? Something that is this mundane at best. More truthfully, it's vain. And let's be honest, it's actually a little bit carnal. It's a little bit schmutzig. Right? They did this to what? To arouse lustful thoughts in their husbands. This is what we're going to use in the holy temple. And God says exactly. Bemarot hatzovot. From the word sovot, we have the word svaot, legions. Do you know why when the Jewish people left Egypt, there was legions of them, even though everybody was exhausted after an entire day? Because the ladies made sure that they looked quite enticing for their husbands, understanding that unless they did so, there wouldn't be a next generation of the Jewish people. They'd just be too exhausted. But marot hatzovot, the marot that you see with a schmutzik, with a little bit of a dirty, I actually see, God says, as beautiful. And this is actually what the Kior personified, and kind of the point that Jerry was made. You can look at the static status and say, obviously, the Ark of the Covenant is the holiest, and all the way down, and this one that you don't even have to be pure for to engage with. And it came from these mundane, and dare I say, even worse than mundane mirrors.
But it came from the woman, and I understand the woman didn't participate and didn't want to give the gold to the golden calf. So it's basically give a present to the woman and says, here, you have something to give to the holy place.
But and even
So
more
I don't know
than
if that's,
yes, but more than just throwing them a bone, as it were, or giving them an opportunity as in reward, we're saying, in fact, we're trying to tap into that more powerful thing. Because sure, the golden ark is holy, but that's exactly the point. It cannot tolerate anything unholy. Not only can it not tolerate anything unholy, it cannot tolerate anything that's not holy of holies. And the truth is, all the rest of the vessels also. Only one vessel has the power to transform, to purify, to take somebody from a mundane state and put them into a pure state. And that's not the golden ark, and that's not the menorah, and that's not the shulchan.
But isn't it the mikvah?
Well, that was the mikveh. That was the daily mikveh for the Kohanim.
Okay.
That's they came in after sleeping the night, and that's our netilat yadayim, which is like a mini mikveh.
Right, so they're washing their hands and feet.
So what is the kior is it has transformative power. And the other vessel in the temple that had kind of that power to take people from a state of badness and put them in a state of goodness was the altar, the mizbeach, upon which people brought their atonement offerings.
Right.
Guess what material that one's made out of? Copper. So
but wait, don't we do that now? We're taking a chicken, we elevate it by doing the blessing. Don't we do, we have a table that's whatever you can do this, and we elevate by, you know, but that's what we do in our daily. So it's the same what God is doing.
Very good. So, so you're a couple steps ahead. Let me get to where you're at, Netta. But the point is that we all of a sudden now have identified something that could be said even a greater quality, perhaps, than the gold. Gold is the height of, in a sense, the righteousness and the zeal and perfection. But right now we're talking about something far more dynamic, far more exciting, as it were. We're talking about not the end of the process, the culmination of the process. We're talking about the very beginning of the process. What is, in a sense, a more powerful moment of Shabbat, a more poignant moment of Shabbat? Smack in the middle of Shabbos afternoon when you've already been saturated with Shabbos for a nice long time? Or that moment when the weekday becomes Shabbat? When did Rav Isaac Luria say, let's create a ceremony and let's serenade the moment? Kabbalat Shabbat, that moment, that transition, that very powerful moment when Chol becomes Kodesh. That's the kior. That's the mizbeach. That's copper. The power to take something and say, I don't want it to stay in its state. I want to elevate it. I want to transform it. I want to come out on the other end of this moment different. I want different. I want to be different. I want to be elevated. That's the power of copper. Let's go back to our original question. How do we make sure that gold is gold of the covenant and not gold of the golden calf? God is telling you got to introduce a little copper and a little silver. You need to have the copper and the silver, and then you know that the gold is gold, is good gold. Passion and zeal is not enough. You need to make sure you are tempering that with the copper and the silver. And what is that in our lives? So we said that the copper in the temple of the kior represents something that you do that you can consider mundane, but you're elevating it. The mirrors, and they're elevated. Your hands are impure and you're elevating them. You've made a mistake and you're now bringing an offering onto the altar and you're elevating it. You want to know if you are approaching the relationship with God correctly, if the zeal and the passion, the gold is correct? Do you have the copper Are you coming with a commitment to change? Are you asking, here's where I'm at, here's what I'm comfortable, here's what makes sense to me, and that's all I'm going to do? At that point, you're not serving God, you're serving yourself. But if you say, God, I want to change, I want to go beyond what I'm familiar with, what I'm comfortable, I want to transcend, I want to transform, I want to be a different person. I'm not here to say, hey, this is who I am, and I want to be comfortable, so I'm going to introduce a little spirituality to make my world experience well-rounded. I got a little bit of, I had my burger, I had my thing, and now I'm going to go do a little spiritual yoga, and now I feel great, right? So spirituality, I plug spirituality into my life, and it's wonderful. Or it may not be yoga. God forbid it could be, I come to synagogue, it makes me feel wonderful. That's not what Judaism is. You're going to shul to become a different person, to elevate, to transcend. The first stop.
Netta feels guilty.
No, but the truth is,
Exactly.
the truth is, deep down, that is what's driving us to shul. We just have to hear our soul. Our neshama says, the reason that I yearn to be in shul, not just to add a little spirituality. That's why you can go and you can do that, and you still won't feel satisfied. The neshama wants to climb high. Ner Hashem nishmat adam. The neshama is a flickering fire. It wants to climb. It wants to go higher. It's not looking to be complacent and satisfied here. It's always trying to go up. And so when serving Hashem, if I'm serving myself, I am defined by my gravity. I'm down here. I'm settled. I want things to be. But if I'm pursuing Hashem, then this experience is defined by my need to climb, and to add, to transform, to move out of my mundaneness. And so you can ask yourself, am I heading down the right path? Well, am I trying to be a better person? Am I trying to elevate? Am I looking at whatever it is, my complacency? And am I saying to myself, yeah, I'm good. Got a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Yeah, I've got it all built in. It's great. It's wonderful.
I got a system going.
Yes. Then you have to, they say, you got to have the copper. You have to have the copper. You can't just have the gold. It can't just be about passion. Passion in which direction? Is the passion heading upward? Is the passion trying to be transformative and transcendent and climbing? Or is the passion just to make me where I'm at feel satisfied?
But that's dangerous, because you don't want to feel comfortable wherever you are. Because when you feel comfortable, no matter where level of spirituality you are, the word I am comfortable where I am, you don't grow, you don't.
No, that's exactly what we're saying. If you're there to serve yourself, then you're looking for the comfort. If you're there to serve God, then you're never looking to be comfortable. You're always looking to grow. You're always looking to push yourself. You're always looking to transcend. That's what the copper is. The copper is always looking to be a conduit for greater things, right?
You're setting up a dichotomy here between serving yourself and serving Hashem. But I think there's a third element, serving the community.
1 minute. So first, let me flesh this out, and then we'll come back. Hold that thought.
Oh, okay.
Okay, hold that thought. I don't want, because
Sure.
that's taking the. But still, that's not enough. You can't just have the copper. You need to have the silver. So copper is that idea of transformation, that idea of purification, the idea that I'm entering into this not to make myself satisfied, but to make myself better and closer to God and ever climbing.
Mm-hmm.
But there's another element, which is silver. And silver was, again, everything about this collection, this silver, speaks to something that could, on one hand, come across as very boring. How much are you giving? Half shekel. Oh, and how much are you giving? Half shekel. And how much are you giving? Half shekel. How much are you giving? Half shekel. Right?
Didn't I say in the beginning that this was the same, everybody gives the same thing?
Yes. Very boring, seemingly, right? Very samey. No No fireworks in terms of the amount. No, it's not going to be like somebody goes, "Oh, did you hear how much he gave?" Oh, she gave. Or, "Oh, did you hear how little they gave?" It's very. There's no schmaltz to this. Everybody's giving the half shekel, and not only that. What was this used for? What was where was the silver in the temple? It wasn't any of the vessels. Not one vessel was made out of silver. They were either gold or copper. So where's the silver? Were the beams made out of silver? Nope, the beams were not made out of silver. So what's made out of silver? Only one thing is made out of silver. And all of the whole temple around was made out of this. The foundation, the sockets into which the beams went, was made out of silver. So we see a similar refrain in how it was collected and what it was used for. It's very basic, foundational, fundamental consistency. It's not exciting. It's not overwhelming. It's not inspiring. It's consistent. It's the foundation. The foundation of the building is not where you put the art, right? And the design and the creativity. What's the foundation of the building? Very basic, not very pretty, but by far the most important part of the entire structure, right? You build the whole structure on that foundation. And that's the other element that God is saying in a relationship with God. It can't just be about the passion of the gold, and it can't just be about the transformation of the copper. There also needs to be consistency. You can't just wake up to do the mitzvahs or to daven when you feel like it, which is what both copper and gold would say. When you're feeling it, do it. When you're not feeling it, Comes the silver and says, if it was right yesterday, then it's right today, it's right tomorrow, and if you're going to do Shacharis and Mincha and Ma'ariv and lighting candles every Friday night and keeping kosher every day, and that consistency, because it's not about you. And whether you feel it or not doesn't really make a difference. It's the right thing to do, then you need to do it no matter what. That's the silver.
Rabbi, I'm doing a practice, I guess it's called a segula, that I read about several weeks ago, where you're supposed to read 3 Tehillim each day, and pray, but you first give coins, like you put coins in tzedakah, you put 2 coins and then 1 kind of coin. And now I'm saying,
but even that 3 Tehillim every day. What happens if one day you're just not feeling it? Okay, so I'll skip it today, I'll do it tomorrow.
You do it every day.
This is another aspect of Yiddishkeit. What is the very first mitzvah in the Torah that was given to the people? The calendar. That element of consistency, that every day is a Yiddish Tag. Every day is a Jewish day. Because ultimately, again, if this is all about serving you, then the days that you feel like it, great. The days that you don't feel like it, don't, right? Gold and copper would say, but comes silver and says, no. Comes this element of silver and says, you got to do it every day. Even if the fireworks are not there. Even if you're not in the mood to put on tefillin. Even if you're not in the mood to light Shabbat candles. Even if you're not whatever it is. That's what a relationship, that speaks, and we know this, we know that these elements need to exist in any relationship. Let's look at these things again in any relationship. If you want to have a relationship really simply because you're infatuated, you have a passion for this person, right? That could be ultimately very self-serving and a relationship that's a very selfish relationship, right? Because what you notice about yourself is I want to be fulfilled, and apparently I can't be fulfilled without you. So why do I want you? Because you complete me, right? So it's all about completing me. And so therefore, my whole attitude in this is kind of selfish. So what are the 2 elements that need to be put in besides for that gold? How do you know that that gold is not, that passion is a right passion? If you go into the relationship expecting to be a different person, it's not about me and about me completing me. It's about me unmaking myself and becoming something new, becoming us. 1 + 1 = 1, a whole different one, right? That is the power of the chuppah. I am unmaking myself as an individual, and I am remaking myself as a new entity together with you. I am transcending. I am transforming. I am not looking just for you to complete me. I'm looking to be changed in this relationship. Number one. But number two, I am committing to a consistency in this relationship, whether I'm in the mood of it or not. If it's the right thing to do, it's got to be done. And that also is an indication that I'm kind of nullifying my own personal passions and desires. That's not what's driving this. What's driving this is something greater than that. And I'm willing, in a sense, to put myself aside. If I don't feel in the mood or whatever it is, but I still know it's the right thing to do, then you can count on me. That consistency, that commitment, right? We see that best with a child, right? We don't just take care of a child when it suits us, when we find it meaningful, right? That's one of the scary things about taking care of the child. They need to eat every day, right? And their pamper needs to be changed every couple hours, right? Whether you're in the mood or not, because it's real. And that's what a real devotion to a relationship is. And the same thing is with Yiddishkeit. Yiddishkeit demands of you a consistency, demands of you the silver. It demands of you to come into it with a plan to transform the copper. And when you have those two elements, then you know you're going to build a golden ark and not a golden calf. Have the copper and silver in place, this commitment to transformation and consistency, and then the passion is going to head in the right direction.
Rabbi, a number of years ago, one morning in the Senate, before the prayer, a group of senators got together to pray every morning. And this was organized by the senator from Oklahoma, one of the two. And one of his friends who usually attended came up to him in the hall and said, "I'm not going to be there today. I really don't feel like praying." And the senator from Oklahoma said, "Well, why don't you talk to God about that?" Maybe that's what we should do.
Right. No,
we don't feel like praying.
I think, there's a certain amount that there was a story that the Alter Rebbe's son, the Mittel Rebbe, had a very unique and special relationship with his father. His father recognized in him somebody who, even at a young age, was uniquely sensitive to spirituality and really cultivated within his son. Helped him really develop that sensitivity and also his leadership qualities, etc. He says that the Mittel Rebbe wrote in his diary that every morning it wasn't hard for him to find a passion in davening. It meant the words of the davening moved him, the understanding that he's standing before the King of Kings in God's throne room, that moved him. So it wasn't hard for him to get into the davening. One morning, he says, for whatever reason, he says, I guess the Yetzer Hara had, decided, had been plotting in that night that he was going to full court press that the next day. He was gonna, and he says, and he couldn't. Try as he might, he started the davening, and that inspiration wasn't there. He wasn't moved, and he's saying the words, and he's being distracted by everything that he sees, and he's battling with himself. He's battling with himself. And at a certain point, he's like, let me just give up the ghost, and I'll just, wrap up the davening, and we'll try it again tomorrow. But he said, no. He says, no, today is another day I'm standing before Hashem. And he pushed himself into davening where he says at the end of it, he was very disappointed. He barely came away with putting enough kavanah into the davening to understand the words. Just understand the meaning of the words. No deeper understanding, no deeper reflections, no emotions, no intellect. Just simply the pashat pshat, as we say, the meaning of the word. He walked away quite dejected. He didn't know what to make of this. And the Alter Rebbe came to him afterwards and says to his son, he says, Beryl knew. His name was Dovber. He says, Beryl knew. He says, what did you daven with today? He says, do you understand what kind of ruckus you caused in heaven today with your davening? That amazing davening of yours.
Wow.
And he writes the story because it's exactly right. The Yetzer Hara was testing his mettle. And sometimes it's not about the passion that you daven with, and sometimes it's not about the transformative energy that you daven. Sometimes it's simply
just do it.
the consistency. I'm not feeling it this moment, God. I'm distracted, but it needs to be done. And I show up. And so that's the silver. So we have, if you think about it, it's a remarkable thing, subliminally buried in the parsha, and again spoken about in this week's parsha. Gold is not enough in any relationship, and how much more so in the relationship with God. Passion is not enough. People have plenty of passion. The average Hollywood relationship, plenty of passion. That's not what they're missing. And yeah, why? What is missing? Because passion can be very selfish. I'm passionate about you, and it could still be entirely selfish. I'm passionate about you. It's all about me and my passions. You're just the target of my passion. And that leads to golden calf. I make something with my passion that's ultimately serving me and not you. And God says, I don't want just gold in my tabernacle. I want copper and I want silver. I want transformation and I want consistency and commitment. And that's when the gold is a golden ark. So to your point, Paula,
Yeah.
I think in terms of service, loving the community, in fact, all of this is how to love yourself also. You love yourself best when you are changing, when you are committed beyond yourself, right? This is, any healthy relationship needs all three. And it's not, and to a certain degree, these three will actually dictate if the relationship is a worthwhile relationship. Now, here's the thing: we're not going to be perfect in any of this. Nobody says, well, if you are not going to have the absolute consistency, if you're not going to daven every single day, don't daven at all. Right? That's not what we're advocating for, and we're not going to say, do this if you're doing this because it's satisfying and fulfilling, and you're not yet in the momentum of transformation, then don't bother. Right? Don't you dare walk into shul if it makes you feel good. Right? That's not what we're saying. We're saying this is what we're working toward. We have to have these ideals firmly. If working with the community brings you tremendous amounts of fulfillment or whatever it is, then of course do that. But don't limit yourself to that. Understand that there's still places to go. There's still what to work on. And that's the definition of a chassid, by the way. The very definition, what is a chassid? What is the terminology? What differentiates a chassid? What is the discipline? What is the philosophy of a chassid? Satmar chassidus and Bobov and Bell's chassidus and Chabad chassidus. What is the common denominator? What it is a commitment to self-betterment. To really catalog, audit, know yourself, your advantages and disadvantages, have a healthy understanding of who you are, and create a personal roadmap, which is why there's always a Rebbe at the top. Not that the Rebbe is the goal, but the Rebbe is like the North Star, is the guide star. And that's why there's a whole bunch of different Rebbes, right? Perhaps your pathway to your relationship with God is one full of passion and zeal, and you're that type of chassid. And maybe this one it's about deep introspection, and that's that Rebbe, and whatever it is. But the point is, you're constantly working on yourself. You're constantly trying to climb higher up onto the mountain. And you're never satisfied. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, it's just that it seems to me like you can daven with passion, you can daven with fervor, blah, 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 blah. But it's better if you daven b'tzibur. Please tell me that's wrong.
It's not wrong and it's not right.
Oh.
No, what I'm saying is it's not as simple. It's not an either or proposition. It's not one is better than the other. There is advantages to davening with a tzibur, and there's advantages to davening with tremendous kavana. And that's why every single person has to have a mashpia. Asay lecha rav, right? Choose for yourself a spiritual mentor, because there isn't a cookie cutter version of doing this. There is not one book that says, this is exactly how you do Judaism and don't deviate. Every single person, and at various points, and it could be for this person, at this point in their life, they need davening with a minyan, and then maybe later on they need a little bit more davening with kavana. There are cases where the Rebbe would stand and be there for the minyan, but daven alone later. He would be there to do what with the minyan, the
Oh,
radishes and the
really?
sure.
Wow.
So and it used to be the most common thing of a Rebbe back in the day was they actually had a room right off the Beit Medrash, and this was standard operating procedure. Pretty much every Rebbe, and there was a door that connected the shul to that room, and the door at various parts of the davening would be open, but the Rebbe would be in that room. Our Rebbe and his staying in the together with the shul was actually kind of unique, not entirely unique, but kind of unique.
Oh.
So the point is it better to daven with the tzibor? Is it better to daven with kavana? Yes,
No, I appreciate that a lot.
yes. But the point is, and to a certain degree, you need to have this braid of the gold, silver, and copper. And in this moment, is a little bit more gold, is a little bit more silver, is a little bit more copper.
Uh-huh.
A blend of all of them. The answer is it just needs, all of them need to be taken into consideration. That's a healthy diet. Sometimes you can have a little bit more carbs, and sometimes you can have a little bit more fat, and sometimes you can have a little bit more protein. You need to have a balance of all of them,
Right.
and that's the key.
Rabbi,
Here,
can I ask something about davening that I heard last week? Rabbi Marcus said that the Rebbe never moved when he was davening.
yes, you did.
And I asked, well, then why are all the chassids like that, like chuckling and
If
everything?
only we were emulating the Rebbe in all other things. That should be the one described. The answer is yes. The Rebbe had a unique way of davening compared to what has become started. That we all chuckle. The Rebbe stood. It was remarkable to see. The Rebbe stood with the nullification of a servant before his master. The Rebbe didn't budge. The Rebbe would stand in the Amida, and the only thing moving was his lips. When you have that level of awareness of the presence of God that absolutely freezes you in place, then
I see. So that was sort of a sign that he was a tzaddik, and they wouldn't consider copying something like that.
people do. Other people do. There are people. That's kind of going back to the point. There's not one way necessarily to do it. There's a general idea that we try to emulate the Rebbe, but obviously in things that are more definitive as to this is a hidur mitzvah. This is the to shackle or not to shackle in the davening, and how to shackle and whatever it is. That's really whatever puts you more into the space of the davening. But the general point that we're trying to make here is that your relationship with God needs to have a healthy diet of gold, silver, and copper, and that's the key. Passion, transformation, and commitment or consistency. All three need to be there. That's a healthy relationship. All right.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Wow, fascinating. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Thank you,
Shalom.
Rabbi.
לכולם.